Good afternoon, everyone. BC Ridgefield here, coming to you live from London. It's just got a couple of minutes past midday here, making it a few minutes past 1100 UTC. Really big shout out to everybody joining the stream live today, from all of our wonderful followers across YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and our fam over at Binance. Everybody, welcome. What a week we have in store. So today, actually, we're going to take a slight deviation from the normal show. I am just going to look to go pretty crazy on quite a few setups, right? I think the market is giving us a really, really nice pullback today. I think we're heading into the week positive. We're going to take a very quick look at the macro environment. We're going to look at the news that's affecting the markets at the moment. And I just want to give you a little rundown of what I did this morning, as we do on every Monday before the London Open, just taking stock of news, events that have come across the weekend, factoring that back into our plans, and then looking to how we can make plays for the week moving forward, right? So first of all, Shy, Finance Heads, Raphael K, Yarrick, my friend, Craigie Boy, how are we all doing? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. Wonderful to have you all here with us. Right, something we're going to do very quickly, because it's very, very good habit to get into. I'm going to run you through the key news events coming up for the week, and then I'm trying to decant my 5 pages of notes this morning down into some bullet points for you. So I'm going to give that a go as well, just in terms of what are the key things looking to affect this market. Hello, Deepak, great to have you with us, my friend. So let's take a very quick look here. Obviously, we had FOMC last week. You know, you never know how these things are going to play out, but we did really have our finger on the pulse there, right? Ultimately, the 25 basis points was already baked in. What happened was almost a buy the rumor, sell the news type event, which is no problem because the markets are incredibly efficient at pricing information in, right? Now, anytime we're looking at risk markets taking a little bit of a hit, and I'm talking about technology stocks, the NASDAQ, etc., we then look for the beta risk assets, I call them that, which are things like cryptocurrency, right? Which are at the very peak of the risk curve. They normally get hit the hardest, okay? And then we saw, some real outliers holding up pretty strong. Stable, Asta, for example, both fundamentally, powerfully driven, which we're going to take a look at today as well. And we are where we are. Now we're at the beginning of a brand new week. For anybody that's new to the show or doesn't know, we're looking at this, we're scanning the US market. It's the largest market in the world. It has the biggest impact on other markets. And the dollar is the world's reserve currency. Jojo, how are you doing? My good friend Jojo. Right, so Tuesday, here we are. We can see here Monday, we've got FOMC member Mirren is speaking. Again, always to be taken with a little pinch of salt. They would have to say something exceptionally dovish or hawkish. That's akin to being bullish and bearish, by the way, if anybody doesn't know the traditional market lingo. So I'm not really there. You can see by the orange folder here as well. It's not high impact news, but they could come out and say something really, really, really out of left field that could catch everybody by surprise. So always worth looking at that. That's in 5 hours from now, which is 5 p.m. London time, making it 4 p.m. UTC. Now, Tuesday is going to be interesting to see what we get from this, right? Because we've got flash manufacturing PMI, flash services PMI, the Richmond Manufacturing Index, but Fed Chair Powell is speaking. This is the opportunity here for the markets. This is where the markets have to be reactionary, right? They can take on board all the market, all the pre-market data, all the preliminary data they want. Nobody really knows, or a few select people know, what Powell is going to say. He could come out and, let's say, for example, manufacturing is really bad. That could affect what he comes out and says. If he has a bit of a hawkish tone with markets at the moment, looking a little bit rattled, and I'll explain in more detail what I mean by that in a moment, you really need to be paying attention to this. And if you want a bit of entertainment, stick on something like the NASDAQ chart on TradingView, go on the 1 minute time frame, and then just watch this thing absolutely dance around for you. Wednesday and forward, I'm going to cover on Wednesday's live show. All right. So we won't worry about that too much now. Now, what I do want to do is I'm going to pop you back to the Bitcoin chart at the moment. For anybody that isn't already part of this, you can sign up and get our Bitcoin report. One of the trading team does it every single day. I do it on a Sunday evening, and you can take a look on Twitter and explain exactly why we're looking here down to this level to hold a support, which we're currently doing. It's a little bit of a bounce here. We need to see a little bit more, but we're going to run into the TA on this. What I want to do is give you my thoughts, information that I share with my trading team on a daily basis, but especially on a Monday morning. I've tried to decant this down into bullet points for you so I don't kind of run on too much. But Horace, how you doing, brother? Hey, almost 100K, right? Not a million miles away, but we did banter about 112 as well. So look, I'm just looking at what big kind of risks face the market as we start, or what key catalysts have we got. Now, one thing we need to look at here, if upcoming inflation or labour market data in the coming weeks surprises on the upside, the Fed might decide to stay tighter for longer. Remember, at the moment, the Fed are very, very interested, as you know, they typically are, but there's a very, very heavy focus on the labour markets and employment at the moment. That's currently soft. If that starts to strengthen, they have less reason to cut later down the line, and that's something that we just need to work on. Interesting chat worker. I could never block you, Horace. Well, don't put that to the test, just in case the filters pick you up if you start saying loads of profanity. But no, mate, no blocking from here. Geopolitical shocks, trade developments. Okay, looking at the ongoing dialogue between the USA and China. You know, could spook risk assets. At the moment, there seems to be a little bit of an AI war going on there. China trying to do their best to kind of dethrone Nvidia in favor, I would imagine, of their own kind of horses that they're backing, which are, you know, the Alibaba AI chip, etc. So we need to keep an eye on that. But that could also move both ways. You know, all of a sudden, and I'm not really pricing this very high, right? But all of a sudden, if we had that flipping narrative, the US and China, you know, the tariffs came down, they agreed to maybe have some bilateral agreement in terms of looking at things like semiconductors. But I do think that is fantasy island stuff, unfortunately. They're very much in a technology-based war almost with one another for market share. Regulatory setbacks, okay? So if there's any unfavoring rulings or crackdowns coming in crypto, remember what we've had recently in terms of the SEC. So we're looking at how that then starts to now develop, right? Are there setbacks? Are there pauses? The good news on that front has kind of been priced in. Now we need to see some carryover. Drawdown revisions in earnings forecasts, all right, especially among the tech and AI names. This is the big fear, because there's a lot of chat going around at the moment about the fact that, you know, things like the indexes like the NASDAQ, S&P 500 are really, really top heavy, that these massive companies, people like Nvidia, etc., the Magnificent Seven, they're kind of, you know, propping these things up, and they're kind of creating this bubble. I disagree with that at the moment. I think if you look back the data for the dot-com bubble and you look at major bubbles, what has happened is your price against earnings has been miles apart, right? There were companies getting bought for tens or hundreds of millions in valuations that didn't even have fully working products, right? I don't see us as there just yet, but it is something that we really need to keep in our minds, because the market will be very sensitive to this, and they'll be aware that as long as earnings are strong for these companies, they can basically back up a lot of their valuations. Henceforth, things keep moving higher. Capital flow is there, all right. You know, global liquidity is there and looks to be potentially getting better. As long as inflation doesn't kind of go too mad and we get that kind of stabilization around growth, jobs numbers still continue to stay soft, we should still be seeing cuts into the end of this year and possibly even into 2026. The idea then being that Powell steps down, we get a new Federal Reserve chair. That person could be a Trump sympathizer. He has, you know, or more of an ally than a sympathizer. He then has more control over that. Then we could really see some wild things start to happen. And then liquidity risks, right? So if rate cuts are priced in heavily, but real rates, credit conditions don't loosen, then risk markets might have a bit of a correction. I don't see this as what's going to kind of, you know, blow this thing up. But again, it's something we need to pay attention to. So if you didn't catch any of that, or, you know, you want to know more information about that, you can always come over and catch me over with the trading team at the Bird Nest. All right, you can find more information down in the description there, or you can just come across and you can follow me on Twitter. All right, so a lot of people kind of messaged about this before. Really simple, just BC_Richfield, as you see on the screen at the moment. You can kind of follow me and the trading team over at the Bird Nest as well. So that was all tucked up in 12 minutes. That's about 3 to 5 minutes faster than we normally get that done. So hopefully that's of value to you guys. The reason that I do this to start all of our shows, especially at the beginning of the week, is it's really, really important within this space where there's so much noise, there's so much false information, such an emotionally driven market, especially not market, but in terms of, you know, the social media exposure to it. You know, this is how I was taught, and this is how I run, you know, that we work with the trading team at TBN. We want to take stock of all the key events. We always want to have a Bayesian approach to data. That means we're constantly taking on board new data, processing that and adjusting likewise. So that leads us on very nicely to where we are now, which is when we're going to look at the charts. Pump is easy, absolutely, Rafa. Very, very hard to fade that guy. I've done a few tweets recently that have worked out quite nicely, but really, really tricky. Finance Head, this is you streaming or another guy? I'm really hoping it's me. I've lost myself at points in my career, but hopefully this isn't one of them. No. So it's being broadcast through the Bird Nest, YouTube and Twitter, Crypto Burbs Twitter, my Twitter, and also through with our wonderful friends at Binance Square. So this is BC Richfield. This isn't the one and only Crypto Burb, although he does, you know, make a lot of appearances. And you can, you know, obviously get contact with him over at the Bird Nest as well, if you're interested. So where are we at the moment? I've got the 4-hour chart up here. This is kind of our most granular time frame that we normally run into here. What I'm going to do first of all is, let me just go from the weekly forward. What are we looking at, right? Weekly, you know, is absolutely fine. I think there's probably a few issues ahead. Got some nice equal lows down here. Also as well, you know, this is the higher low. People worrying about is price setting this lower high at the moment. And then for your real kind of pattern enthusiasts, right, could be starting to look a little bit like a head and shoulders pattern. All right. So I need the shoulders down here, right? So you would normally wait for price to come underneath and you would have an underside retest of that. I always bow to people that are much better pattern traders than me, people like Axel Kaibar, all right? So if you're interested in him, he's one of the guys that, you know, CMT, absolutely fantastic, probably has the best data in the whole industry on patterns and their likelihood of succeeding, failure, etc., and what happens off the back of that. Yeah, sure, mate. So we're just looking at the chart at the moment, Finance Head. So I think here on the weekly, these are levels that I'm interested in, right? We got the all-time high from back here in January 25. Let's lock these back up. All right. And we can see as we're kind of holding this line here, this is a real kind of line in the sand for me. And I'll explain this a bit more as we get into the daily, but price has, you know, been within this consolidation here. And then we've also come out and we've been within this consolidation here. Price deviated the lows here of this, step back inside. We got that weekly close, looking for expansion back towards the range high. We got that a little bit. We took out the prior weekly high here, closing below this. You know, we look at this in terms of price could be looking to correct a little bit here. For example, see this week here, the weekly high, price closed above that weekly high. So we immediately expect progression towards that week's high. We took that, we now closed underneath, meaning that we could be in for a slight consolidation through here. But we're going to look at that and we'll hopefully become a little bit clearer as we move down here onto the daily. All right. So again, we've got this consolidation here. We're going to look at this on the daily, but at the moment, there's nothing really bearish to write home about on the weekly. Now, what we can see here is we can see how price was within this kind of ranging area here. Just going to draw them out roughly, guys, to give you an idea. And then we're talking about this other range being in here. All right. So whether you're going to take the range from there or you bring it down here to include the prior all-time high, that's fine. Either way, we can see where the majority of trading is being done within here. So again, holding this level here is quite key. So this is the all-time high from back in May. And we can see price retesting into this here and then retesting here into this consolidation that led to the pump. The other thing I find quite interesting here is we had this up move before the sweep, making this classic breaker area if we draw that across here, after breaking out above this, closing above this, and having progression higher, price is now retesting this area. So there's a lot of confluence along here in terms of buyers stepping in. So that's what I'm looking for at the moment. Put our daily levels back on. Why was I looking at this area? So the kind of tealy or grey green box you can see here, there's a few different areas I've added here. We were discussing this again. You can go back, look at the previous reports. You can go and run through the prior shows as well. They're all available on the Burb Nest YouTube. You can go and find them under the live tab. So we were looking at this area of consolidation here, all right, leading to this nice expansion higher. And that's what we've got. Ultimately, we've shifted back into structure now. We're back with inside the range here. So I'm happy looking here for opportunities to go long, right? We can see quite clearly if we look here, yeah, we can see resistance. What happened here? Price broke through this level, yeah, and this really didn't offer any resistance. Look at that massive candle that just ripped through it, all right? Then what happens here, we can see this turned to support here. It turned to support here. When we closed underneath, this is where it started to become resistance. We can see the same resistance taking place here. Now what we've done is we've closed above it again. So now I want to see this area hold. All right. I think this could be a really good area to take some positions. But again, I'm not the kind of trader that places limit orders on certain levels. I like to see some form of lower time frame confirmation. And that's ultimately where we then get our 4-hour chart that comes in. So let's take a look on the 4-hour. And we can see what happened here, right? Look at the key liquidity. This was our internal liquidity here. These are the highs made up before we got back towards the prior all-time high from back in January. Again, look at price really struggling with this level. You can't really see that big impulse move, right? Similar to how we saw this fake out here, this fake out here, right? Then look at the difference here. You get this fake out, then price does an under and over move, and then we see the momentum, we see the energy in that breakout through here. Then we go into the mode of looking for these consolidations to support price higher until they start to fail. Again, we came back down into this one here, continued moving us higher. We came back down to retest this consolidation, moved it higher. Now, the big and interesting thing here is if we look at this consolidation within here, you can see this was the first real time that price came down and really violated this, closed below the bodies. I'm interested in the bodies here. This area then turns into a potential breaker zone, meaning that drawbacks into here, we either want to see it cut through that pretty quickly and reclaim some key levels, or we're looking at this for a deeper correction. Now, initial targets were in here, and the plan was we'll take a look and see how this reacts in here. Now, obviously, this played out into the evening. We got the close down here overnight before, and then when I got to the charts here for Monday, for London Open, we saw that we're kind of coming into this area of support. So while this continues to hold, I'm quietly optimistic. All right. I think we've got this nice consolidation within here. We can see this kind of lower time frame range within here, a lot of trading taking place. So if the bulls are going to step in, this is a really, really good area to do so. Something we want to ask ourselves here is what level do we get comfortable at to start taking plays? Well, I'm either going to look to long this, right? Because this is the key area, like I said before. You know, if you really zoom out on the chart here as well, you can see the significant slight pullback here before our big move. This led to a large move, decent pump from here. We saw the sell-off here, the sell-off here, and also the sell-off here. Price then had a real kind of hard time with this. Looked like it was going to reject again. Trapped and squeezed those shorters there and then blew them out of the water as we moved higher. Now the big question is, are the buyers still here? We can look at lower time frames for confirmation, or something. If we wanted further confirmation that I'd be looking at is I'd be looking at this area here, right? This consolidation after the pump higher, we came back down into this area, yeah. Then we saw the pump higher from here. Then when we came back down here, look what happened. We closed underneath this. This now is going to be a prime area throughout here, this consolidation, but also this area here, because even if we get rid of that, you can really see within here a key kind of support resistance flip. Price smashing into this, setting higher lows, yeah. Then we see that breakout above, then price comes back down. We get that retest there once again, and then moving higher. One moment. Hey, there we go. Just had a word from our technical team in the back end. Sorry, guys, we had a few technical issues earlier, so I think we should be connected to all of our crew from Binance now. So if you are here, very much welcome. Apologies for the technical issues. It's great to have you with us. As always, we're still on Bitcoin at the moment. You really haven't missed much, but I will just summarize for you now. All right, so basically, long and short of it is we're looking for this area to hold here. It's a key higher time frame pivot or area of support and resistance. We're now back above this. We failed to retest this area. We've got this consolidation backing this up. But if we wanted to wait for price to come back, and if I wanted a, let's say, more of a confirmation setup, well, I can see the consolidation we had in here. Remember, if we're looking at our auction theory, you're always looking at the point that price is just seeking fair value. These consolidations is where it finds it, where we get these expansions. All right, these expansions are when price is discovering new value. Then we want to see these consolidations where it holds. Stepping back in here would be the higher conviction play. So there's this, meaning that low time frame setups from here with expansion up to these levels, playing it level to level as we go. All right, versus waiting for the expansion back into here, seeing price kind of hold this level, right? And then looking to follow that same kind of level to level play here. As in, you want to be early with a higher risk setup, but a larger reward, or you're waiting for confirmation, getting into a point where prices step back into a range and we can expect a healthy expansion, at least to the range highs, therefore gives us a good way to manage this trade. And also we can look to pyramid that, so we can step in an intraday basis within here or a short-term swing. When we get up to here, we can take some profits. We can look to hold this position. When we see further confirmation higher, we can then add to that position as we move higher, ultimately using the profits we secure through here to fuel and fund the move further back up. Jibril Master, hello, mate. I can't work out the name, but it looks like some kind of awesome sideways Z or an S maybe, but thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate it. Tom, dzień dobry, dzień dobry. I'm not Polish, mate, unfortunately. I do try my very best to learn from people like Adrian, obviously Crypto Burb, QBS Crypto, Crypto Tech, all these wonderful Polish people that I work with, but it is one of my favorite places. So I think this plan's pretty clear on here, right? If you do have any questions, do ask. We can always come back to this. But ultimately, you know, setups down here look pretty good. If I'm looking at this on the 15-minute, what would I be looking for? So I do like trading within these sessions. These are just representative of when the highest volatility and volume come into the market during the London and the New York sessions. Within here, we're starting to see a little early stage of a recovery, right? So why do I like this? Well, I like this here because we can see that we've got this shift in market structure. Yeah, so we've just been setting lower lows, lower highs. Now we've come up here and we're setting a higher high, all right? We're reacting in and around the 12K level. We did sweep this out. Look at that really long downside wick. That's showing you that there's absorption there, all right? Those sellers that are trying so aggressively to get the market lower. So we're starting to see this early kind of formation here. I think, you know, if we're looking at it from here, I do like this. It's not confirmed yet, right? But I think a nice expansion above here and a retest of this area could give some good buying opportunities back up to here. Weakness, and if we start continuing to dig into this area, then I think, you know, there's only one kind of short-term liquidity pool in here that's of interest, and that's here. All right, down at a 111.337. Again, we could look to just come back down into this area and chop around in here for a while, right? But if you see that big flush and that fast recovery, that V-shaped recovery here, then these can often provide those good levels to step in at. Again, if you wanted a slightly more secure play, I would wait for price to kind of step back in to the upper range that we just discussed, all right? So what else did I promise that we'll cover today? I said we'll cover a bit of Ethereum, didn't I? Let's pop on that. Let's share the love and go over here. I think we should have a nice clean chart ready to go for us. Yeah, not too sad, is it? Get rid of these old ranges. Plus all the old TA. There we go. Right, so on a daily scale, look, we can see these highs over here, right? Look, rejection, rejection, rejection. Price stepped in aggressively above these here. And we're now kind of holding it. If we just draw a very, very rough line in and around an area, even if you focus on the highs, key rejection here, key rejection. These led to major sell-offs, right? And often while you see people draw these areas out as boxes, right? if you wanted to, in terms of focusing on the local areas here, you could go across something like this. All right, either way, we can see we're back at a key level. If sellers were in control of the market at this level before, bulls now want to see buyers taking control of this. So as we step in here, this is okay. A little bit messy. It's basically within a range. We had this expansion here. We're now drawing that across. Quite a good way to look at this in terms of a range would be to take our volume profile here. And we can see this, right? Deviation from the high, retest of the value area high, retest again, price now selling off. Price is now looking for a pretty strong close under the value area low here. That's the low of this range, and is also looking to lose the point of control. I do quite like this low here. And this would be a great area to see price have a reaction, right? Run this low now, kind of chop around a little bit from today, and the plan would be something like this. This is to show that this value area low, if we extract this across to here, we're stepping back within this range, all right? Lows to the high of this range have been playing out quite well. So it gives us some shorter term plays, all right? Sorry, Craigie boy, I didn't see your question here. Would you consider recovering the FEG about 1,300 as enough to go long? So let me just pop back to Bitcoin very quickly and we'll come back to that. Because I did miss that question. So on the 4 hour, so would you be looking at this here, right? So I'm somebody that loves gaps as well, Craig, but if you're looking at this kind of gap here, if we get the 4 hour close and we get this large kind of gap through here, so what, for anybody maybe that's not au fait with this, if we get the candle close here, let me just get rid of these for a moment. We'll leave them on so we can take a look on Wednesday how this is playing out. But this is a bearish gap here. We also have another bearish gap above us here. These gaps are just market inefficiencies. This is when price is selling off really aggressively in the market, right? Failures in order pairing, and then price is looking to kind of draw back. They often provide really good areas to get short again. In this case, obviously, bullish gaps do the opposite. But something that we look for here as well is when we start to see these gaps invert. And this is what Craig's looking at here. So bearish gap here. Let's clear this up a little bit, guys. Bearish gap here, yeah? So again, look, when we set these bearish gaps, good example here. See how price often draws to these and then you get continuation. Where do you get continuation to? You get continuation typically to the next resting liquidity, which focuses on lows, highs, because we're looking at this here, rejection of the gap, we target this low. Then when we see this low fails to kind of drive price down into this low here, we would then look at this gap to be that vehicle, yeah? So in terms of looking to this gap to be like, right, price returns to this gap and then sells off, targeting the next liquidity lower down, no problem. When we see these gaps violated, right, we get inversion gaps. That's where we see price close through as it does with this candle. You will then see on my charts anyway, these turn to purple, meaning I'm now looking for the retest of this area for buying opportunities. The other area I'm really interested in when we set an inversion gap, when we have displacement to the upside, is looking for some kind of structural shift, which we get here. And then just the icing on the cake for me is the breaker. This is the up move before price swept liquidity. What we do then, again, this should be an area of supply as price closes below, returning to this should give us selling opportunities here. All right. This is where we would expect sellers to be in control of the market. When we close above here, when price returns to this area, those people selling the market there have the ability to get out of their trades if they choose to. It means that they can mitigate, meaning if they're short here, price blows them out of the water and they're holding through drawdown. When price comes to here, they can take on board the new information. They probably didn't expect to see strength in the market at this point. It allows them to close out their shorts and also allows them to step into their long positions. So this was a golden position. So what we're looking for here, as Craig rightly highlighted, is something similar. Now, one of the difficulties here is we've seen a really big sell-off here, which is why, just as we alluded to earlier, waiting for that secondary setup here where we start to close through these gaps, again, turning resistance to support, resistance from this gap, resistance from this gap, resistance level here that we're looking at. If we can conquer all of those, you then start to get the feeling that buyers are starting to control the market again. And what do we want to do? You know, we never want to enforce our will on the market. We want to try and understand where institutions, where larger players are getting involved in these markets. And then I just want to kind of grab a slice of that action when I think they're stepping in and it gives the best chance, in this case, for more upside plays. All right. So exactly that, Craig. These gaps are going to play key roles here because at the moment, they're areas that are ripe for rejection and to push price lower. Okay. And what's interesting as well, if we draw this across here, because it was a play in this original expansion, we can actually see that this area is still kind of playing a role here for price. All right, again, this consolidation, this inversion, we've got a lot of information in here, as well as the fact the origin of this large move higher, that buyers were very present at these levels. So that's what we're looking at. All right. I would consider intraday shorts in this area or an underside retest of this, just trading back down to the liquidity. But ultimately, if we look at the kind of macro environment, if we look at everything going on, the markets might be having a little bit of a shakeout at the moment. But I really don't think this is, there's anything on the macro, the economic view, that are leading us to believe that the markets are going to turn notably at the moment, other than seasonality telling us that it's a really shoddy month for stocks in general. All right. So as we pop ourselves back over here to ETH, we can see, here we go. That's why I wondered where those nice little lines went from our one last week. And we can see, again, we left these on here. We just didn't get these setups we were looking for. Again, looking at the area that sellers are controlling the market, large move away from here. We always look to short these moves down to support, unless we get this, right? Strong move above it, retest of this, trade it to this level, look for the same thing above. If not, we just do what the charts tell us, all right? If the charts are showing us weakness and we have resting liquidity lower, then the chances are that's the comfort move for the market. It's going to seek that liquidity out. If we shorted this move here and then we short this here, we get stopped out and the market gets above here, then you can bet this is a good place to go long, because it's now trapped the sellers down here. The squeeze is on, price comes up, retest of this area, I would be buying that all day long into there. So going to just leave that on there for a minute. We'll cover that Wednesday as well. We just have a few people that join our show on a Wednesday that unfortunately can't make it on a Monday. So we'll, just so that we can, or I can hold myself accountable. Obviously anybody shares in the public domain should always come with accountability. Sadly, it doesn't always, but it's certainly not the type of person that I want to be. These lows under here were really, really interesting as well, right? These flat lows. What's controlling this, right? So I get this from students quite a lot, and they're saying, like, well, why is this a key level for you? Or why are you kind of targeting that area? What you want to watch for, first of all, is squeeze your charts up and look for these really aggressive rejections or these good pumps, yeah? If you can find an area where those things overlap, yeah? For example, lots of lows, yeah? Pumping market higher. Big sell-off in a really big V-shaped aggressive move lower. So if we look at that and just take the general area of that, you see price, how it's kind of pumping into this level. You say, okay, price is kind of getting stuck through here. Well, where's the breakout? Well, here's the range. Yeah, here's the support. There's the resistance. Price isn't really giving you any example that it's really looking to move through this, because the area we want to conquer is this, right? This is the area we've been getting those rejections. You can see it really clearly through here. Then price gets back up to this area. Again, doesn't get all the way until this one. Large sell-off, inducing sellers, right? What we can see here is a beautiful range. Let me draw this in here. Get rid of this for a moment. So you see price ranging in here, deviating the highs, coming down to the lows, deviating the highs, coming down to the lows. Large deviation, steps back in the range, pumps. And then look how it just has zero respect for these highs now. Yeah, it really just rips through them like they're not even there. They're the kind of moves that we want to see. And why is that relevant? Well, because if I'm looking down here, these lows are really, really key. This just general area, and I'm not even doing this, I'm just doing this really roughly, right? I'm going to do it bright green to just show buyers were really just buying this up. Sell pressure coming into this, we get that beautiful rounded bottom, and then price pumps. So if I look left, I'm asking myself, well, what's kind of controlling this area? And then I look at this consolidation. Where's the source of that consolidation? It's here. Swept out the low. This is where price moved structure. So now if I look down here, I can say, okay, this is the consolidation I'm really, really key on, understanding here. Okay, you'll often see these as blue on my chart. It just represents the key area of demand. We see buyers stepped in here again. Beautiful retest of this area. Buyers, buyers, led to this big pump. We're now holding this area. So the reason on ETH that I'm looking for this, if we start closing below this, and that's why I've got this level here, which is 4063.50 here on Binance, is if we get sharp moves below this and we really start to find resistance, then that's the type of plays that I would be looking for, targeting this consolidation. And then really we want to kind of see these areas hold, because this is the origin of the move higher. Any weakness that we started to see in here breaking down, we would target the order blocks or these areas. Yeah, we move these across to here. And if we start seeing weakness in these areas, we can be pretty certain that we're moving lower. And there's a lot of resting liquidity, I would assume, under here. So that's really the play here from ETH. I think, again, a little bit like Bitcoin, we either kind of hold this area here, move higher for an underside retest of this level, or back kind of into this where we saw all this trading take place. If we start showing weakness again and moving back under here, I think price could look to start to refill some of this inefficient move higher. Let's just take a quick look at what we've got here. Yeah, so just getting a lot of questions coming in the chat that's being forwarded to me. Guys, apologies for everybody from Binance that wasn't here earlier, but you can follow me here. It is the same as the name on the screen, but just to show you, a lot of you have asked, you just follow it through here, BC_Richfield on Twitter. Do reach out, follow me along. You can go and get all the charts, everything that I share on there. In fact, I think rude of me, I missed a couple of questions earlier. Finance Head, is there a place to download your chart setups? I share them with members all the time, like daily through the Burb Nest. You can find out about how you can get access to that in the description. If not, best thing to do is follow me on Twitter. You can reach out to me on Twitter, and I'm always more than happy to share my thoughts on there as well. How would you see the fact that perps took the low on ETH? That obviously they're more aggressive markets, right? The futures. So that's how I would look at that. If you're going to be doing any kind of study across that, I'd recommend looking at how spot and perps engage with one another. Typically, you're looking at it as, the gambler's head are in the perpetual markets, and the kind of longer term investor, or sometimes the wiser head, is in spot. So it really does depend. Ultimately, there was a really big liquidity pull down there driving that move from the futures market or the derivatives. Now, I would be looking at the spot market to either show some strength here, and you've almost deviated the two. Maybe the buyer is too strong above that level, so spot is getting front run. But quite often, we look to that level to get ourselves back involved with our holdings. But yeah, good question, Horace, for sure. Right, so back to the charts. Here we go. So hopefully the ETH plan is quite clear here. Again, who does squiggles like this? I mean, actually lots of people, but we all just looking to see if they work out. So we're going to leave these on here. The plan is, again, like with Bitcoin, we're in demand, in the area of demand at the moment. This isn't the place to be shorting this, in my opinion. The place is weakness below this level, and then looking to fill in some of this inefficiency down to this kind of area. I would also look at this, because this was a key area to flip for price previously, just trading it level to level. Remember, let me find you an example of when we last sold off. If we're looking for these sell-offs, if we believe we have these confirmed sell-offs in here, then we're looking for these consolidations for price to retest this and then ultimately sell off. Consolidation, price selling off. When we then see these areas of consolidation like this, expect rejection. Oh no, it's popped above. Now look how buyers are supporting this area. Buyers are now back in control. We then look as price regains structure, like here. We're just looking for these consolidations on the breakout. Retested, price moves higher. Next consolidation within here. Price breaks out, very small retest, really big move higher. Now, again, as you can see on the way up, you don't always get perfect retests of these areas. But as long as price is moving in this way, look, within here, you've had no major structural shifts. People start to freak out when they see price moving down, little sharp moves like this. They think everything's over. These are just generating, trapping people into going short, generating more liquidity so the market can pump higher. So you want to look for these consolidations to support price higher. If we're breaking down, however, we want to look for those consolidations to keep price suppressed. So if we look at this here, when price gets back to this area, if we can rip back above this and start turning this back to support, I think this becomes, basically a large deviation, liquidity generating event, and then price rips from here. Right, so we've got a couple more to cover quickly that I just wanted to say. I did say that we would take a look at Solana. So let's see where we are with Sol. Again, never quite got this at the early stages. We did set a new low. Look, if we drag this across here, We got the move above, we got the retest. Where do we target? We target the highs. What do we get at the highs? A pretty big fat rejection. So we did get the move in the end. We did hold the area. We did break above it. Intraday plays were from here. I did not take these. Price came into this level here. Look at that wick rejection. And then again, what are we looking for? Well, if this was the key area we were targeting, price moving above this here, because look, originally we're looking at this as rejection. This is the down move. That's the liquidity sweep. Price drove into this here, found support. This is a higher time frame gap. Price then drove into this. We're looking to trade this lower. Yeah. Well, we would be, obviously, if we had the higher time frame confirmation. Price, the only reason that we would then look to long is if we get this move above here, which we ended up getting here rather than there. We got the move above. We got the retest of the area and our line here. All right. But price ultimately just rejected at the next liquidity. We've then broken down, and then look how we've used this area as rejection. If we were looking to short this here, like I said, I wasn't actively shorting this at the weekend. That was the perfect opportunity to trade intraday from there down to here. Big, strong close below that. And then where do we come into? Lo and behold, key area we were looking for the retest. Why? Because we didn't get one. If you look at last week's show, we identified this consolidation here for the breakout. Price closed above it here, but never retested this. Large move higher. Now price is in here. And look at that initial reaction, which is quite good here on Solana. So if we're looking at this again on the 4 hour, I'm not going to bore you or add more chart annotations here. We just need to get back in this area. Yeah, this kind of consolidation here that led to the pump. Price has now ripped underneath this. We want to see this area closed above. And in truth, the origin of this move lower. All right. Again, you either want to be taking these trades from the extremes, so you see the sell-off, you identify an area that's key support, you look to become involved, you look to become a market participant here, very aware that it's a risky place to get involved, you try to catch a falling knife. But if that's the way that you trade, then you get involved here, or you wait for confirmation slightly higher up. All right, we're going to see a lot of this across the different alts and across, most that we look at today. But one thing I had, or a couple of things that we were kind of quite early to with members. One was stable. So I wanted to just take a look at this. We're just talking about the whole, glorious buy the dip approach to this. Obviously, again, from a fundamental standpoint, from backing, from exposure, this is a really, really strong asset. So we're looking at this at the moment. Again, consolidations, keeping the market propped higher. We're now in this kind of nice area here where price is almost forming some form of bull flag here. I'm dropping this down here to the hourly. All right. Just trying to see if we've got a really kind of clean area through here. No, I don't really like that. I was looking at that to be the deviation, underside retest. Is this the level that's really keeping price suppressed? Because if I look at it like this, it's very difficult to get a kind of set line on here where you've got more than 2 touches. All right. So if it's not clean, then it ain't going on the chart. What we can see immediately is that this area here has acted quite nicely between, very, very minimal resistance here, but moved above, buyers stepped in, buyers stepped in, buyers stepped in, buyers stepped in again. So let's see now if that can be the catalyst for a move higher. I mean, obviously, look how strong this thing is compared to the others. Burnside, hello, mate. Jojo, gold getting close to 3,800, money pouring into gold, right? And rightly so. It is a good asset. I mean, Peter Schiff obviously going to be over the moon with this, but it is a good asset. What we want to see from Bitcoin is Bitcoin acting a little bit more like gold, like this kind of, hedging mechanism. I don't personally think we're there yet. It's still trading very much like a risk asset, but I think we're getting closer and closer. In my opinion. So immediately I've got a really good trading plan here. Yes, it's on a very low time frame, but what price hasn't been able to do at this level is really break down below it. So if we got a strong move below it, and then again, underside retesting here, yeah, I think this kind of consolidation in here is quite a good area because it lines up with this high. So, nice little intraday play down back into this consolidation that led to this large move higher. I really like that. And I would love to be buying this here. I really, really would. Okay, I got to go in a moment, guys. But the other one I got asked for today that I wanted to cover for you all was taking a look at Asta. All right. Now, Asta is an interesting one here. Let's take a look over with our Binance fam. All right. So, again, you can kind of see here, obviously, it's, CZ's baby. which is awesome, because if there's one person in this industry I will never fade, it is CZ. I love this. Loads of people asking. I wonder how many people bought this dip. The amount of people that started to really kind of crap themselves when this thing started to correct. And the team and I were just talking about this, right? You just you're praying for these. When you've got someone like CZ behind this, you've got the fanfare that goes with it, you've got the exposure, you've got his industry contacts, how well and how super knowledgeable the guy is with the space. Very hard to fade that. All right, so holding this gap looks really nice here on the 4 hour. Obviously, we don't have a lot of data, so there's not tons and tons to go on. I'm going to move this down to the hourly now. And I quite like this. Here's our up move. Price came back down. I'm kind of looking for this area here. I like this area here to hold. Want to see price really kind of push up off the back of this. There's a few different things that we've set kind of going into here. We have this bullish order block through here now as well, or, an area of demand. And I really like this area here as well, because this, we led and swept liquidity out here. This is our breaker. So ultimately looking for this area to hold, to push up. I'm not trading this with leverage at the moment. I'm just looking to buy dips as much as I can on this. So if we do get anything deeper, again, we're just targeting these consolidations, all right? You bought the dip. Bird posted it last night, and I blindly took it. Love that. Obviously, make sure you trust who you take these things from. We've known Burnside for a long time, right? So he knows exactly what he can expect from the calls that come from TBN, and obviously the talisman himself, Crypto Bird. But I know he's been in this for a little while and is a very, very sneakily shrewd speculator when it comes to these projects. So he's another one, don't really want to be fading his input on this. I'm really glad you bought the dip. We did too. I think we've got a really exciting week ahead of us, everyone. All right. I think we just want to be calm, approach this with a clear mind, wait for those opportunities to come into key levels, whether you're looking to add some spot to your bags, in which case you can happily average in. If you're buying some here, just don't go all in, save a bit of powder. If you do visit these levels here, bring your average cost down, right? Your average entry price, sorry. And ultimately different, if we really start to pump here, then wait for some confirmation. And I'm not afraid to buy this higher, as long as, like I said, the macro environment doesn't undergo any significant changes. All right, legends, thank you so much for your time today. Thousands of you live with us. A special mention to our wonderful crew over at Binance, our friends there, our friends at OKX as well. Everybody else that's joined the stream today, a big shout out and a big thanks to you all. Like I said, remember, you can go and find out more information. You can go and drop me a follow over at BC_Richfield on Twitter. Do try and share a lot on there as well. Something you can find pinned to the top of the profile is my education thread on the inside bar pattern. It has played out some wonderful trades for us recently, so if that is something you'd like to know more about, please do just pop on there. It's pinned at the top of the profile. You can follow that. Do give me a follow, reach out with any questions, and if not, do come and join us over at the Bird Nest. You can come and find everything you need down in the description. All right, legends, have a fantastic week ahead. I'll be back live with you all on Wednesday. Thank you as well, Finance Heads, for joining, and everybody else who was with us today too.